Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Maiwa Gidi and today we are talking about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, aka the AFCTA. What is the AFCTA? The AFCTA is an agreement between all the 55 member African countries that they want to trade with each other as one. With the AFCTA, African countries can move goods and services from one country to another without threats like tariffs or security issues at different borders and stuff like that. All the borders will sort of be completely open to trade from different countries. Key facts about the AFCTA: it started in 2021. It includes all 55 member countries and the 1.3 billion people that are on the African continent. And it's also projected to have a GDP of about $3.4 trillion as at when it gets to like a high level. One of the goals of the AFCTA is that it's supposed to boost intra-African trade, like I've talked about. When goods and services can move from one African country to another without border tariffs, it reduces the prices of those goods and makes them cheaper for everybody, which will make people want to buy them more. It also fosters industrialization and economic diversity, because when more African companies can compete on the African playing field, it allows them to make more money, which will allow them to invest that money back into their businesses and grow their businesses and get more industrialized and innovate more, since they are making a whole lot more money. A single market also improves Africa's trade relationship with the rest of the world, because it allows us to negotiate as one single block under the AFCTA platform instead of negotiating as one tiny country against one big country. Like if you imagine now, a country like Ghana now wants to create a trade relationship with the America will look at Ghana as like, okay, nah, you guys are small. So even if they want to negotiate with Ghana, they will negotiate with Ghana from the position of strength. Like they will have a whole lot more to offer Ghana than Ghana can offer them, so they are in the position of strength. But if Ghana is negotiating as Africa, 1.3 billion people, it then gives bigger countries like America, the EU, China, and all these other countries more reason to create better and more balanced trade relationships with Africa. So this fourth part is a very interesting part that I really hope we end up implementing. But it's supposed to facilitate the free movement of people from one country to another without passports or without border checks or without all the different hassles we currently go through to move from country to country. So the AFCTA is both supposed to facilitate the movement of people, facilitate the movement of goods, and create a common airspace so that people can fly from one country to another. Why is the AFCTA important? The AFCTA is important because currently intra-African trade is very poor. We trade more with other countries than we trade with each other, which, like I said in past videos, it stops money from circulating within the continent, and money just keeps going out all the time. So we need our money to stay on the continent. So the AFCTA is supposed to help with that. One of the potential impacts of the AFCTA is supposed to improve intra-African trade to as high as 52%, which would take it up to the general world average, like intra-European trade, intra-American trade, that's the American continent, and intra-Asian trade. They are all much higher than the intra-African trade. So the AFCTA is going to help increase it to the level that it should get to. Another big potential impact of the AFCTA is that it's going to do a lot when it comes to poverty alleviation, because when goods and services are moving, more companies will move and they will hire more people and they will generate more value, which will end up killing poverty. Another potential impact of the AFCTA is that it's going to create an African market that can compete with the rest of the world. It's very important because, like I talked about, trade relationships, it allows you to be able to create stronger trade ties with other regional trading blocks too. I've said it before that Africa currently mostly trades with the outside world raw materials. So somebody can think about it like, if Africans mostly trade raw materials with other countries, what about within the continent? Wouldn't they just be trading raw materials with each other? And who wants if I have raw materials, I don't need to trade raw materials with you. That's a sensible point. But the truth is that there are also a decent number of companies that are creating goods, finished products on the African continent, that if they had access to other markets in different countries around the continent, it allows them to grow more, which then also allows them to invest more in their companies and then start creating higher value chain goods. That is one of the very, very important things that this AFCTA will allow those companies do. The next question will now be, how does the AFCTA actually work, or how is it envisioned to work? So it's envisioned to work by removing tariffs of 90% of goods that are being transferred from one country to another, because if you all know, maybe like Nigerians now, when we are importing cars now, this is why our cars are usually very expensive, because there's a whole lot of tariffs that are put on those cars before they come into the border. You have to pay customs duties, and the customs duties might almost be around the same price of that car, or at least maybe like 70% of that car, which then almost doubles the price of that car than what you would have gotten it without tariffs. So the AFCTA will allow for the reduction or the almost complete elimination of tariffs on almost all goods that enter a country from the African continent, thereby making those goods cheaper for everybody. The next thing I want to talk about now are the challenges that the AFCTA currently faces. One of the biggest challenges that the AFCTA currently faces is, I have talked about this before, infrastructure. Infrastructure. If you want to look at the biggest problem that I think currently faces the continent now, is infrastructure. Infrastructure is where a lot of problems end, and in short, is where a lot of problems start, because it's one thing to say you want to create a framework to move goods and services from one point A to point B, maybe like move goods from services from Kenya to Nigeria. Another thing, how will those goods actually get from Kenya to Nigeria? Africa has 55 countries, and all those countries have completely different leadership. And all those countries with their completely different leadership have completely different interests. So different countries can have different reasons as to why they feel the AFCTA might be bad for them. Like, they do not want bigger companies to come in from other countries to come and cancel out their own companies, like outcompete them and bankrupt their own companies. So borders are usually a way to protect smaller companies from the bigger companies that might likely outcompete them if they were allowed to come into those countries. Another big challenge in the AFCTA's implementation is that a lot of the smaller countries might feel bigger countries like Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia can overshadow their own input, because the economies of Africa is usually around 5 countries. Around 5 countries make up the bulk of the economy of Africa. So the smaller countries might feel like if they create a regional bloc with these countries, those countries now can sort of dominate them when it comes to decision making, and it will be the interest of those countries that will likely be taken into account rather than the interest of the smaller countries. And one other big challenge currently facing the AFCTA is that a lot of countries have not ratified the free movement of people aspect of the AFCTA. Normally, if the AFCTA is implemented fully, you should be able to use your Nigerian passport to travel all the way to Egypt or travel all the way to South Africa without any kind of border check. I've also a video of them showing like an African passport that is red. So they do plan to create like a general African passport for everybody to use, but countries currently are afraid to open their borders up to every other country because of the current security challenges that the continent faces. Like the countries now in the Sahel region that fight all manner of terrorist groups. If you open the borders with those countries, there's a good chance that those groups will spread to different countries, and it allows those groups move much more easier within countries, which will be very, very problematic for the countries that are going to have to deal with those issues. So those are some of the main challenges that are limiting the full implementation of the AFCTA, because some of it has already been implemented, like lower tariff on goods, easier movement of goods too have already been implemented, but the free movement of people and the common airspace doesn't seem to have been implemented yet. The final thing I'd like to talk about now is the geopolitical implications of us finally getting the AFCTA to the level that it's supposed to get to. One big thing, like I said, allows Africa to negotiate as a single bloc, which means better trade relationships with other parts of the world. Another big geopolitical implication is this: to allow African countries to much easier attract foreign direct investment to the continent, because a foreign company that wants to invest in an African country will know that he's not just investing in the country, they are investing in the continent. That if they build a factory in South Africa now, they can easily transport those goods from South Africa all the way to Kenya without any kind of tariffs, without any kind of new regulations that you have to start thinking about. Africa will have one single regulatory framework, and all the companies can abide by just that one single regulatory framework, instead of figuring out regulatory frameworks for 55 different countries. All you just need to do is know the one AFCTA framework, and then you can use that framework to deal with the entire continent, which will be fantastic for everybody involved. Another important geopolitical implication of the AFCTA is that it allows Africa to speak as one voice and allows us to act as one group, thereby in the Security Council, in the United Nations, everywhere we would sort of act as one single group, which improves our power. It also improves our geopolitical space in the rest of the world. It allows us to move bigger than what African countries tend to currently move at this level. So with all the general points, I hope I have allowed people that watch this video to learn a little bit more about the AFCTA, and the people that did not know that it was currently in place, maybe you can also go do some research and figure out what other ways this particular initiative can be beneficial to Africans, and maybe push for it in your own countries too. So if you have enjoyed the video, please like and share, and I'll see you next week with another video. Thank you very much.